Good morning. I am Gloria.
And I'm Steve, and we are here to continue the conversation we've been having this month on the rhythms for life. Over the years at TMP, I've been on the elder team and the teaching team.
I currently serve by helping lead the drama team, and Steve and I also serve as pre-marriage mentors for engaged couples. 11 years ago, I was the lunch lady at the elementary school where our two youngest kids were attending. Being the lunch lady wasn't my life's dream, but it gave us a little extra income and allowed our kids to attend the lunch program for free. It was there that I met a little boy who I found out who was in foster care. To my complete surprise, as school-age children aren't my passion, that's Steve's thing, I could not stop thinking about this little boy. God had begun to whisper to me, and he didn't stop.
We'll continue the story in a minute, but first I want to ask you, what comes to your mind when you think of the word hospitality? Webster's dictionary defines being hospitable as given to generous and cordial reception of guests or offering a pleasant or sustaining environment. Well, Gloria and I always considered ourselves hospitable people. We'd make it a priority to have people over to our backyard for a campfire or over for a dinner party or for coffee. We were generous, cordial, and pleasant.
But the whispering continued, and I shared it with Steve. The next 2 years involved much investigating, praying, processing together, and a mountain of paperwork in obedience to this whisper. On August 3rd, 2012, our lives changed forever. A 6-year-old boy we had just met with thick glasses, huge eyes, and infinite energy took his first step through our front gate carrying a small Spider-Man suitcase. One small step for him, one huge leap for the Nikkel family.
It was a significant decision with eternal consequences. We now look back at our lives as BS before Solomon and AS after Solomon. Fostering Blue are generous, cordial, pleasant North American Webster's understanding of hospitality to crap. Sometimes literally. Now, hospitality hasn't always had Webster's meaning. In fact, when it's mentioned in the Bible, I think it looks a lot more like fostering than it does like dinner parties. We are here to talk to you about gritty Jesus hospitality. Many of us in the room call ourselves Christians, or you may be exploring what that might mean. What Christian originally meant was little Christ. So we're to be smaller human versions of Jesus. It begs the question, though, what was Jesus like when he walked on this earth?
Did he have campfires and dinner parties and then go back to his real life? Let's cut to the chase. Jesus summed up his mission in Luke 4, where he stated, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, and to set the oppressed free." Jesus didn't pay lip service to this. He lived it by feeding the hungry, loving kids, loving the outcast, helping the poor, taking care of widows and orphans, giving hope to the hopeless, standing up for the defenseless, serving before being served, and ultimately being beaten, mocked, and nailed to a cross where he was left to die. This sounds a little next level from the definition we started with, but honestly, the center of all these amazing acts was love. Jesus' main purpose, his whole reason for coming to earth, was to love people. He was and still is 100% about loving people. It was and still is the center of the gospel. His entire ministry revolved around and always pointed back to love.
Jesus modeled gritty love, which is really what we have come to believe his version of hospitality is all about. It's summed up in 1 John 4, verse 16, which simply states, God is love. And that's what he calls us to do, as we see in the words that follow. All who live in love live in God. If we want to follow him, we cannot do it without living a life of love. We cannot be little Christs without doing what Christ did. Love radically, selflessly, sacrificially. It's that simple and that hard. We'd like to say that becoming foster parents was all rainbows and unicorns, a blissful transition, but it certainly wasn't. Our kids were bigger, and for years, no childcare was needed. Now we had to plan for respite every time we left the house. Kids had to move bedrooms, routines were disrupted, and a significant amount of attention was taken away from our other 3 kids. A child who has experienced a lifetime of trauma in 6 short years has a lot of healing to do, and this doesn't happen easily or quickly. It got messy. Our kids were 11, 14, and 16. And they were okay with our Webster's hospitality, but found the Jesus version rather extreme. And honestly, it was. This was 24/7 life change that required all of us to reorder our lives. I remember our first family meeting after his arrival where they expressed their frustrations. The meeting went on for some time. They wanted Webster's hospitality back pronto. It was then that Gloria stopped them and said,
I nominate you, and you to go upstairs then and tell that little boy he has to leave because he's too hard. They sat silent for a brief moment until one said, well, when you put it that way. We never had that conversation again. Although it didn't magically get easier after that, something was shifting in all of us.
In fact, when we found out 5 years later that Solomon's sister, Savasha, who was also in care, was being moved homes, Gloria and I were both amazed and blessed to hear each of our kids come to us independently and state without reservation that she needed to come and live with us. No. See, we're a team. That's good.
It's our only Kleenex, so use it wisely.
That she needed to come live with us. Not only that, but they would help out in any way they were needed. They had learned to embrace this gritty love and couldn't see living any other way. Our kids are amazing. They were ruined for Webster's hospitality. And here are 5 kids today.
Aww.
Yeah. This is what we call abundant life. Maybe too abundant some days. Yes, there are many challenges, but when we stop and think about our lives and what has the greatest significance, it is clear. Out of all the things that we've done and pursued in this world, the most important has been, without a doubt, raising our kids, all 5 of them. So, what might this mean for you? Here are some practical principles for gritty hospitality.
Get over yourself. To be honest, the amount of times that I've had to get over myself, it's staggering. I had to get over my own selfishness, my own laziness, my own desire to control how things were turning out, my own emotional walls I had built. Every day is a choice to be either critical or gracious, picky or kind, and I use those words because those are the words that I deal with. Do I win the battle every time? No. Every day I have to work super hard at it. It's a daily choice for me. So my question for you is, what do you have to get over? Another principle is to listen for the whispers, the big and the small. This involves spending time with God. One way we spend time with God is through prayer. There's a lot that could be said about prayer, but for me, I have heard the whispers most clearly when I make the choice to sit in silence and lean in to listen what he wants to say to me. Because he always has something that he wants to say to me. We also hear whispers by spending time reading the Bible. When you read the Bible, you are reading God's words. God speaks to us when we read his word. It's that simple. Sometimes we hear whispers through a story at church. Sometimes we hear at the gym, in our jobs, while working at a lunch program. For me, the biggest part of hearing the whispers has been making the choice to just be open. God is always speaking to us in one way or another, and we have the power to listen or to completely shut things down if we don't want to hear it.
Because listening means nothing if we don't act. This leads us to our next principle: obey the call to gritty love. This is what our church vision statement is very clear on: reordering our lives for the compassionate cause of Jesus in our friendships, city, and world. Love is a choice, and it costs. It can get a little gritty, and it will absolutely push into some of our personal time and will obliterate the nice plans that we carefully curate for our lives. Does this mean that all of you should run out and foster? Maybe not, but imagine if everyone in this church did. We could put a dent in the 11,000 foster kids in Manitoba who are in need of gritty Jesus hospitality. Maybe your whisper is to support families by providing them with respite. Now, we want to stop and acknowledge that we don't do this job alone. We have 7 amazing families and 3 big kids of our own who are all part of Team Solomon and Savasha. They have loved them and us through generously providing care through respite. TMP is also part of a new initiative in our city. Care Portal is a partnership between social workers and churches seeking to practically support families with immediate needs beyond what CFS can provide for. You can find out more about this at the info center at the back.
At the end of our lives, when we stand before Jesus, he isn't going to ask us about our career, our job, our wealth, fame, or any other earthly thing. What he will be interested in is how much we showed love during our time on this earth, the gritty kind of love he modeled for us.
In closing, we want to pray a blessing over you from Hebrews 12. I would ask you, if you're comfortable, to open your hands as a physical way of saying yes to this blessing. Keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race we're in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed. He could put up with anything along the way, cross, shame, whatever. When you find yourself flagging in your faith, go over that story again, item by item, that long litany of hostility he plowed through. That will shoot adrenaline into your souls. Thank you.
Amen.